Some general notes first. Can we remind officers and external representatives to switch their microphones and cameras off until asked to present, and then to switch them back off once they have spoken? Members of the committee should keep their cameras on throughout the meeting. Councillor Lee Davis and Councillor Ernie Goldsworthy have filled the 2 elected member vacancies we had on this committee. However, Lee is unable to attend this particular committee today, so as long as members know now that Lee is the new member on this committee, and as I said, Ernie as well. So welcome, Ernie, to your first meeting. As far as the co-opted members are concerned, Parent Governor first, Tracy Wilkes has had to step down from this committee, and discussions are ongoing with Democratic Services to fill this vacant position on the committee, as well as, because we've got another vacancy on as a voluntary sector governor or member. So there's 2 vacancies there, and I think I can inform you of what could very well be a 3rd vacancy, and that's Michelle Simmons, who has apologised for being unable to attend today, but I understand that Michelle is on the verge of, again, finishing with this committee. Okay. On to the next item, item number 2, declaration of interests. Anyone got any declaration of interest to make? No? If not, on to item 3, trauma-informed care and nurture provision. For this item, I'm going to hand over to Sue, because there are a few head teachers, 2 head teachers have been invited to come along, plus Sue's officers as well. So Sue, if you can do the introductions, because you know if they turned up or not, and then we'll move on to this item number 3 on trauma.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jones. Yes, we've got this was a request from members to actually understand what the local authority has done in respect of the trauma-informed schools agenda and also the nurture schools agenda. So rather than have Gavin or myself or anybody else sort of give you what's been going on, we thought it would be useful to have head teachers, as we have had previously, to actually come and present the work that we're doing. So we have Alec Mills, who is the head teacher at Toyner Rodin Primary School, started last Easter. He's going to give you a view of how the trauma-informed schools approach has been working in his school, and how we've worked with, how we actually had funding from Children's Services to support that agenda. And then David Anstey, the new head teacher at Ysgol y Graig, he's been in post since last January, is going to talk about the nurture provision and how that sort of has rolled out across his school, because Ysgol y Graig has a nurture provision for Key Stage 2 pupils in their school. The aim is, as Harvey and Safe will know, when we first put these together, the aim was that we would actually go to Ysgol y Graig for this meeting, to have the meeting in the nurture provision, to actually be able to see it and to see the new school. But obviously the pandemic has stopped that. Hopefully next year we'll be able to actually get out to see, the committee will be able to get out to see some schools and actually see the good work that's going on in our local authority. So I don't know, I put it trauma, I didn't do it in alphabetical order, that's not very good, is it? So I have put trauma informed first and then nurture provision. So Alec, do you want to go in that order?
Yeah, that's fine.
Here we are.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to try and share my screen with you to take you through the presentation. There we are. Hopefully everybody can see this now. Okay. I was appointed to Tynerodden to begin in April, and as part of my interview process, one of the things that I discussed with the panel was the vision of making the school trauma-informed and trauma-aware to support the learners, particularly given what they'd been through during the pandemic to that point. So upon starting, one of the things that was clear that we needed to establish a set of core values for the school to enable all the staff to move forward with a shared direction. So we worked together. There was a lot of collaboration, a lot of discussion, and eventually we settled on these as our 3 core values. And we use those to underpin all the work we do as a school and to help us achieve our vision of giving our children the best possible start in life. When we were approached by the local authority to become a pilot in trauma-informed schools, it was very, very generous of them to offer to cover the cost of this full training package. So that allowed us to get all of the staff within the school trained at the basic level. Then there was senior leadership team training to help really consider the strategic direction that we would take this in. And then 2 staff volunteered to complete a diploma. And they conducted an additional 5 weeks worth of learning spread out across the summer term last year, where they had some online bespoke training, and then they had to produce some presentations to showcase the work that they were doing in order to complete their diploma. And both of them passed, which was excellent news for us and for them. The Trauma-Informed School site describes a trauma-informed school as one that is able to support children and teenagers who suffer with trauma or mental health problems and whose troubled behaviour acts as a barrier to learning. And it was really that last part of the sentence there, the barrier to learning, which was of interest to us, and really supporting those children to be able to access school to their fullest potential, despite whatever they'd been through. The whole school training we received spent a lot of time improving staff's understanding of ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, and the possible impact that they can have. And we were taken through lots of research from studies that described the number of ACEs and then the potential future consequences for the children that had experienced them. And we were really able to consider those in the context of our school and our learners. One of the things that was particularly interesting for me, because I'm a bit of a science geek for these things, were the models of the brain and how brain development supports this. And we spent quite a lot of time looking at Panksepp's model of emotional systems that include rage, panic, grief, fear, and then the pro-social aspects of play, seeking, and care. And you'll see in a future slide why that particular model has become so useful for us in our school. One of the other things that we really took from that training was PRRR as a way of dealing with a child in a crisis, and really putting protect as that initial response to a child who might be struggling with something, and working through that process, and then really reflecting on the behaviours that we might have seen when they're regulated and able to understand and appreciate what they were doing, and how that had affected them and the people around them. So that was quite a significant shift in our approach to behaviour management as well. Through the school implementation, the training had a really explicit link to our values, and I think as such it was really well received by the staff. One of the things we looked at to really make a difference was being able to spend time with the pupil who is in a crisis, and we developed a 7-minute policy. We've got the trauma-informed diploma staff who were available, and they helped support the vulnerable learners as a planned part of their timetable first thing in the mornings to make sure they're in the right frame of mind and headspace when they enter school, and also allowing us to drop other pupils in when the need arises. For instance, if we get an operation encompass from the police as an alert to domestic violence, we know then that that's a pupil that one of our staff can check in with at some point that day, just to make sure that they are in the right place for school. We spent a lot of time choosing a programme to enable us to track our learners, and we went for an online system called Motional, which I'll show you a little bit of in a moment. And the other thing that's been really key in our implementation is making sure that our approach to this is explicit within our school development plan. And you can see that well-being and the standards of well-being in school is number one on our plan. It's been the centre of what we've done over the summer term last year and this academic year. And there are specific links to TISC within that. Motional is the online tool that we've purchased to use as a school. One of the reasons we chose it is because it links really closely to PANCEP's model of emotional systems, and that helped to tie a sort of golden thread running through what we were doing then for the staff, so they can see how things are linked and they can see the things work in harmony. The intervention pupils who were identified following whole class snapshots receive individual programmes, and they are then delivered by the diploma trained staff, and termly snapshots are then completed on those children to create new programmes to best meet their needs moving forward. So this is an example of a class snapshot, because that's how we do those annually, and that's where we identify our individuals to support. You can see that the green bars are really high, which is what you would hope for. So the pro-social scores are really good. This is a median. This class, you can see that the blocks to learning in red are low, which again is good and what we would hope for. And then the executive functioning of the children is quite high again in blue. So, that's the sort of pattern that we hope to see from our children. But as you can appreciate, our learners vary, and not everybody has a profile that fits within that pattern. This is one of our individual profiles, and you can see there that the pro-social and executive functioning are much lower than we would hope for, and those blocks to learning in red are really high. So what we do for those children is we use the online programme where everything is hosted, and it suggests activities that we can work on with those children to really meet their needs. The practitioners who know the children best are then able to go through and select the ones that they really want to focus on. This programme was developed to really develop care and fear, so increasing the care score and reducing the fear score. The children then receive 2 interventions per week, usually on a one-to-one basis in our intervention room, which is ever evolving, and the staff who are working in there are trying really hard to come up with ways of meeting the sensory needs of their learners. And also we're really lucky in our school that we've got some fabulous outdoor spaces, and that's allowed the staff working on the interventions to create some small group activities with a real focus on peer-to-peer engagement, where they've been able to go and develop den building and things like that, with a focus on how you can collaborate with other people to achieve things. The snapshot at the top is the one that I showed you a moment ago. The one below is the same pupil at the end of the autumn term. So the first one was taken in September and the second one taken in December. And you can see that whilst we didn't really have the impact we were hoping for with care, you can see the fear has really reduced, and along with it, the other blocks to learning. So this pupil will now have a new plan for the spring term. Care will still be a focus on it, but we'll be able to spend less time worrying about those blocks to learning, because you can see that what they've been doing has had an impact and will benefit that child when they return to class. This is a particularly useful visual that we'll use as we move forward because it'll graph change over time. So when that pupil has their spring term snapshot completed, we'll be able to see that hopefully the red lines will continue to drop, and then we'll really be looking to see some of those green lines increasing to show that we've got improvements there. From a leadership point of view, because we've talked about more personal pupil level so far, there's a place within the system where I can call up some figures, and I can see then the green percentages there are showing how much those pupil scores have increased. So that allows me to have a more strategic overview and look at the impact that's happening. But also really useful within this is we're able to see where pupil scores, despite receiving an intervention, have dipped. And then we can have conversations with families about things that might be going on. Our main target pupil there who's gone back significantly, there's actually a lot of family upheaval that's happened at the moment. So despite working on a programme in school, other things that child has experienced in their outside the school environment have had a really negative impact on them. So that'll allow us to create a new programme and use that information from home to really be specific in selecting the activities to help support our child over this term. So it's early days really for us in terms of demonstrating impact, but hopefully the programme that we've chosen is starting to allow us to do so. And then over time, we'll build a more detailed picture of the learners and what difference we're actually making to them through the trauma-informed approach as a whole school, but also with these really bespoke and individual sessions to support their learning. We captured a little bit about pupil voice to share with you. Pupils really enjoyed their sessions. Quite a few of them referred to mindfulness colouring. And that's one of the things, particularly for our older pupils, that the staff have found really useful in sort of disarming them and bringing their barriers down and allowing them to talk about things when the child is distracted doing something relaxing. And that's really helped to get them to open up when perhaps they were a little bit defensive and reluctant initially. And now moving forward for us with our next steps. Obviously, we're continuing the intervention sessions. We will complete the class snapshots in the summer term, and that'll help us identify, where we're going with things and if there are additional pupils we need to bring in. If anyone causes a concern before then we do an individual snapshot on them immediately. So if there is a pupil that any staff member or any parent feels is struggling with their well-being, who isn't on the programme at the moment, we don't make them wait until next year. We are able to slot them into some gaps in the timetables at the moment. And I suppose the big thing for me is exploring some funding streams to really enable staff to continue delivering this. If we in the governing body are happy with the impact that's being made, and we really feel that it is providing value for money, then it's up to me to try and find a way to make sure the staff are available to keep doing this next year and that it doesn't just become a flash in the pan. A culture of change is never quick and easy, but I think we've made some really positive strides in the short time I've been at the school, and we do feel it's improving the well-being of the learners through this, along with other initiatives we've put in place. And I think it's testament to the staff for how receptive they've been to the things that have been suggested and how they've embraced this particularly as an initiative for our school. And that's me done. I'm happy to take questions if there's time. If I've gone over and we just need to move on, I understand.
Jeff, sorry, I don't know if Harvey's frozen on my screen. Jeff, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Sue. Thank you for the report. It's really interesting. Can I just ask a question? The whole school process would describe a school consisting of learners, the teaching and support staff, the SLT, and the governing body. Were governors able to access the training at a strategic level? And if so, to what level? And has this been useful to the active support of the school by the governors?
Governors were not able to attend the training, and that was to do with numbers. Numbers were limited because we needed to join with other schools in the authority. So it was really putting the emphasis and the priority to those. And we also had a number of carers, foster carers across the authority who were also able to join. Obviously, we have kept the governors informed of things as we've gone along. They've been involved in developing the vision for the school moving forward, and because of the financial aspect of this and the use of staff, they were involved in the strategic plans in terms of developing where staff were. So whilst they weren't able to attend the training, they have had a key role in really supporting the school and SLT plan for how we were going to use staff, because it's meant that LSAs who would previously have been in class have now been released for part of their working week to be able to support these children. We are lucky in that there were members of the governing body who work for Merthyr Valley Homes, and they'd actually been through a trauma-informed process for their staff and some of their residents, and as such they were really enthused and they were really on board with us moving forward with this as a school, because they'd seen the impact that it had had with adults and their engagement with adults, and they could really see how it would benefit our children. So, you know, the governors have certainly had a strategic role to play in it.
Thank you for your answer, very kind.
Okay, all right, Sue, happy with that?
Harvey, I think you're on mute. Okay, I don't know if Harvey can hear me. There we are, he's back. Are you back?
He's
you're
back.
On mute.
So he's back.
Right, I'm back now. Sorry about that.
That's okay. So thank you, Alec. Should we go over to David now and see? There may be some questions for you afterward. Alec was about your sort of comparison between the two, but if you're okay, Harvey, we'll go on to David.
Yes.
You're on mute, David, I think.
I think David could be on mute.
Sorry.
There we are.
Right, hopefully you can see my screen. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yep. So it's a privilege to be able to present some of our work to you today with regards to the National Nurture Schools programme and the direction that we've taken it within Ysgol y Graig. So the impact of COVID-19 on children's well-being and emotional health is well documented. However, from detailed conversations with parents and families, it was clear that there were four main overarching reasons for this that as a school we had a duty to address. A lack of contact with teachers and friends who were important attachment figures, changes to routine, real anxiety from pupils and parents about the return to school, and having to adapt to new rules and significant changes due to risk assessments. It was clear that we needed to provide a safe space where children could reconnect, develop resilience and bounce back from the lockdowns that had so adversely affected their lives. Ensuring that the new processes and mitigations are clearly presented was also key to ensuring a feeling of safety for our learners. Given the strength of our LA Nurture class, we had a great base to work from. So as the school, and through consultation with our partners in the local authority and consortium, we felt strongly that a focus on nurture schools was the answer we needed to address both the short and long-term impacts of the pandemic. The third goal of the RAS strategy begins with a key aim in supporting learners' health and well-being, and states that all children and young people in Merthyr Tydfil can easily access the necessary support to improve their emotional, mental and physical well-being, and therefore are ready and able to learn. All partners nurture the benefits of belonging, friendship, relationships, families and communities in the lives of our children and young people, and all work together to ensure that these are an integral part of a positive educational experience. With this in mind, we strongly believe that embedding Nurture Schools training and the principles of nurture into our school was right for us, our values and our ethos. And so we began to co-construct a plan of action with our staff and learners that would support the whole school family. So as a school, we strongly believe that for this to work, the learners, parents and staff would need to play a collaborative role. Through parental surveys, the establishment of the Learner Wellbeing Crew and our Health and Wellbeing staff team, we were able to ensure that the Nurture Schools Action Plan and its early implementation was both collaborative and all-encompassing. Led by a Deputy Head Teacher and Elenco, the Wellbeing Crew were quick to establish a child-friendly set of principles based on the Nurture principles that were encapsulated then into their own creative design. This would go on to embody our wellbeing work and our drive to become a Nurture school. At the same time, the establishment of the Health and Wellbeing AOLE group ensured the voices of staff from across the school were central to the development of the strategic area of learning. And it is this team that will go on to ensure that Nurture Schools principles are embedded into all areas of school life. So the 6 Nurture principles on your screen tie in explicitly with the local authority RA's strategy, raising the aspiration of all our children and young people and our expectations of what they can achieve irrespective of their background. These 6 principles are intrinsic to our current vision and curriculum development and will act as a golden thread that will run through all policies, procedures, curricula and extracurricular provision. In the next 2 slides, I hope to show you how we've begun to implement these principles into our school life and the early impact of this work on the well-being and emotional health of our learners and staff. Principle 1 is that children's learning is understood developmentally. The use of the Boxall profile is instrumental in our ability to provide learners with the targeted intervention that they need and to evaluate the impact and effectiveness of those interventions. Boxall is a teacher-led assessment of the social, emotional and mental health difficulties of children. Our pupil voice has reaffirmed the children's belief that we all learn at different times and in different ways. And Boxall is one of the tools that will allow us to understand the causation of learning development issues and implement strategies that support all learners to succeed. So we began the rollout of Boxall with children in our LA Nurture class, extending then to all pupils on the ALN register. Nursery was then selected for the first whole class rollout, giving my strong belief that early intervention is key to securing long-term success. The analysis of the Boxall assessments then formed the basis of discussions within our additional learning needs surgeries and the crafting of our IEPs. The development of these surgeries, where our ALNCO works in collaboration with practitioners, ensures effective person-centred practice and universal provision based on the developmental learning needs of our learners. The Boxall profile supports practitioners in planning whole class, group and individual strategies that address individual and specific developmental needs. The early impact of the Nurture Schools work with regards to principle is in the improving understanding of staff. Data is now used far more effectively to identify the most appropriate interventions and create understanding of the barriers to learning. It is enabling us to address the developmental needs of all our learners and to thus establish the most effective interventions and provisions for them. The supportive collaboration between the ALNCO and other practitioners is ensuring that the support provided to learners is both effective in addressing gaps in their well-being, which has prevented learning progress to date. Second principle then is about offering a safe base. To developing the learning environment as a safe base has always been key. However, with children's return to school following the multiple lockdowns, this has never been more important. We've had the privilege of moving to a new build in September 21 and have ensured that the spaces that we have created are both safe and provide a neutral landscape where children are not overstimulated by the surroundings. In addition to the physical features of the class, we've implemented visual timetables that provide certainty to a child's day. Whilst this supports those children identified as autistic or having ADHD, it also ensures that all learners know what to expect through the course of the day. Certainty has been in short supply over the last 2 years, but by including such a small change to the children's learning environment, we've seen positive effects with children stating that they now like to know what's coming next. One of the key reasons behind the negative impact of COVID on mental health and well-being was the severing of emotional and physical connections between people. Implementing meet and greet at the door and on the playground brings safety, friendliness and belonging to all learners. Every single learner is met both on the yard and at their class door with a positive message, a smile and the mention of their name. This is really important in developing a sense of belonging and making them feel special. It draws a line under any issues from the previous day and whatever's happened at home, and begins a new page in their learning. And in a recent survey, 97% of parents agreed or strongly agreed that the school was a welcoming place and that they felt that they could share their concerns both openly and honestly. Anecdotally, this has in part been attributed to the meet and greet times in the morning and the farewell times in the afternoon. Providing a safe space for parents and carers is as important as ensuring a safe space for the children. We've established a parental room where parents can share their experiences, thoughts and concerns with our newly appointed family liaison officer or member of SLT, identify in-school support and where appropriate external pathways of support are signposted for further help outside of the school's capacity. We strongly believe that the safer our parents and learners feel, the more impactful the support is that we can provide. Principle 3 is the importance of nurture for the development of well-being. So the development of our well-being principles comes directly from communication with learners and staff. We've undertaken surveys and data analysis to ensure that the voice of all stakeholders is heard and influences the direction of the school. As a result of these discussions, the school has invested significantly this year in ELSA training, ensuring that all children have a point of contact to whom they can seek support at key transition points within the day. Furthermore, the internal appointment of a wellbeing and family liaison lead has supported the development of this further, with the ability to put in timely interventions, both as a proactive and reactive measure. The early impact of this is considerable, with a number of children now receiving urgent support as a result of external circumstances. Staff wellbeing has, as with all areas of society, taken a dip over the course of the last 2 years of uncertainty. The COVID pandemic, alongside the death of the previous head, was coupled with the redundancy process within the school, and as a result, emotions and trust were not as high as they could or should have been. Through the implementation of nurture principles, the reorganisation of staff teams, clear lines of communication, we are developing a more collaborative, open and honest ethos within the common idea of one team, one journey. Staff teams have provided a safe space for practitioners to share ideas, concerns and issues, leading to timely intervention, amendment of provisions or signposting to support structures or professional learning both within and external to school. Continued development of the learner leadership groups, the work of the Learner Wellbeing Crew and the Parental Community Forum will further secure support for our learners and their families as we seek to grow into a community-focused school. Emotional literacy and the power of oracy are essential elements of communication that are required in order to fully support the emotional health and well-being of our learners. Through dedicated ELSA sessions, learners are provided with the words and opportunity to express themselves in a safe and calm environment. Without judgment, learners may share their feelings openly and will be supported appropriately to overcome negative feelings. In developing the communication of our learners, we fully engage with Welcome, a speech and language intervention that supports children's early speech acquisition. The pandemic has heightened the need for this support, and with the help of the RRS funding from Welsh Government, we've been able to release a highly trained member of support staff as our literacy champion. Her focus is on assessing, supporting and intervening to ensure that children's speech and language and literacy issues are dealt with in a timely manner. In addition to this, we've been able to place an LSA within each class in order to support our most vulnerable learners and ensure that barriers to learning are addressed in real time and support provided to ensure the progress of all of our learners. Principle 5 is about behaviour being communication, and we know that all behaviour is communication. And through the rollout of PBS training to all staff, whole school training on attachment theory and neuroscience, as well as specific training on nurture, ADHD and ASD, all staff are fully aware of the challenges that our learners face both in a social and emotional context, and are mindful of the external factors that can trigger negative behaviours. An awareness of these factors does not mean that children are permitted to act negatively without consequence. Rather, it provides us with an opportunity to understand the cause of negative behaviour, provide support and intervention for the child from our highly trained ELSA team, to self-regulate and adapt the environment to provide them with safe spaces to calm and self-soothe. As well as developing the child's skill, we must also recognise where self-regulation is not an option, either due to an additional need or the nature of dysregulation. On these occasions, the Wellbeing Network of ELSA trained staff at Family Liaison Officer SLT are available to provide nurture, support and care for the child to ensure their safety and that of others. It is the job of this team to provide regulation to the situation and then the timely support once the child is calm and ready to engage. In addition, the introduction of peer mediators has increased the leadership capacity and emotional intelligence of some of our older children, who have been trained through the nurture principles to support younger peers in both conflict resolution and play. The whole school approach to PBS is developing well across all progression steps and moving forward. And we will use this practical and theoretical understanding alongside the nurture principles and develop an ALN awareness to create a positive relationships policy. This policy will be the overarching theme that influences all others. It will focus on the embodiment of the principles of nurture into each policy area, provision and curriculum design, and will be co-constructed with learners, parents, governors and staff. The final principle then is the importance of transition in children's lives. The arrival of the ALN Act has been an important milestone in education. The timely focus on person-centred practice and universal provision has fitted well into our drive to become a nurture school. Principle 6 surrounds the importance of transition in children's lives, and the use of class on a page, one-page profiles and other such documents has supported us in ensuring that at every juncture of a child's journey through our school, they are now being supported appropriately and effectively, which will ensure seamless movement throughout the school and beyond. With preschool now on our site and ever closer links with Penedre, we now feel that we're in a position to truly support our learners as they enter, move through and leave our school. Developing deeper transition links with Penedre will enable us to continue that work of one team, one journey, and support fully the continued educational progress of learners. The process of developing a nurturing culture will be different for every school. It isn't about signing up to an off-the-shelf programme, but about looking at our core beliefs, our knowledge of our pupils' needs and our commitment to supporting them to achieve their very best. By addressing the early nurturing experiences that pupils are missing, we can help them to develop the social skills that they need to thrive and the confidence and resilience to deal with whatever life throws at them, not just in school, but for the rest of their lives. Our vision is one of inclusivity, support, understanding and togetherness. And through the development of each of the 6 principles, the ongoing work on relationships-based policy making, as well as the up-to-date professional learning of all staff, we are well on the road to becoming a nurture school. Thank you very much. Are there any questions that you'd like to ask about that?
Any questions to David? Lisa?
Yeah, Chair, I haven't got a question, just an observation. So if there aren't any other hands up, I'll just do that. Is that okay? Yeah, I'll go ahead. Okay. No, I just wanted to thank both of our heads. I hope that everybody in Scrutiny can see, just how much work goes on within the primary schools, all of our schools, but obviously, talking about particularly primary this afternoon. And I think, obviously, I'm a governor at Ysgol y Graig as well, and the feedback I've had has been absolutely phenomenal. It's been excellent. But I really just wanted to commend both the heads. And I think I just made a couple of points. I think for us as a local authority and for us as a Scrutiny, the key thing there is the impact, where you've got the impact of just what this does for our young children, our young people, our future generations. It is absolutely fantastic. Talk about the nurturing, etc., but the feeling of safe, the feeling of being listened to, the feeling of that sense of belonging as well, and then of course also adding to that the ways forward that were outlined as well, so not just taking this on board, but actually looking at future impacts and how we can take it forward, monitoring and evaluating, which is obviously important. But the other thing I picked up on as well is the principles, and obviously that transition phase from year 6 into year 7 is absolutely vital for us, going into the secondary schools. Sue and I have been talking a lot lately about even more aspirations, but even more of what we can do to support our primaries to get that transition right, and continuing the hard work as far as literacy is concerned, especially for our young boys as well. So I just wanted to commend both the heads there and thank you both ever so much, not just as your cabinet member, but obviously as the governor of one of the schools as well. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lisa. Ernie?
Yeah, thank you, Harvey. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I got no questions, but I thought the report was superb. You know, the first time I've been involved with scrutiny for a long time, and I thought this I'm sorry if my speech is a problem. A lot of people may not know, but I've had a stroke. But it doesn't bother me, but it does take a time to work things up. But certainly, I just go through my bits and pieces. I was saying the report trauma-informed care and nurture provision, I believe, hand in glove to an early report, raising aspirations and raising standards. In page 6 of the trauma report, bullet point 3, I believe, is outstanding. I've just got the piece here. Just to say it here, the implementation of a relationship policy for all staff to ensure they interact with children in all times in kindness and compassion. This includes no shouting, put downs, criticisms and shaming. Now, this is a very important issue, in my opinion. Now, just moving on again, in the Raising Aspirations report, I should like to return from what I said earlier time ago. Yeah, this particular report, I have to say, this report is absolutely impressive. As the earlier report, I really thought they were good. In the introduction and background, it states that the past 10 years education performance across the county borough has been a cause for concern. In my experience, there has been a cause for concern a very long time ago. Back in my time, children in the main were simply dumped into a secondary modern school. Those of us who went to a grammar school were forced into a mould. We were simply pushed into passing exams. I never wanted to go to a grammar school, but when I was there, I did not really enjoy it. No one bothered to ask me what I really wanted to do. I passed more examinations when I left school at my own time. Yeah, the strategy in the report shows development for education, workforce, and development for environment and learning. This is magnificent. This should help children to progress with development, education, environment, and learning. Yeah, I have to say, I feel very happy that these reports are being a great help to children today. I'm very pleased for that. And thank you very much for what I have to say. Thank you, Harvey.
Thank you, Bernie. Any other comments, questions? If not, it remains for me to say a thank you to the two head teachers, Alec and David. I'm sure that all members here today will have learnt considerably from their presentations. So once again, gentlemen, thank you very much. We all enjoyed those presentations. Such important work has been done, is going on, and it'll all add to our aspirations, Sue's aspirations, and everybody else's aspirations. That is to raise aspirations and to raise standards within our schools, something we shouldn't forget. So once again, gentlemen, thank you very much. On to item 4 then, attendance at school or attendance in school. Sue, I know you're with us. I don't know whether Chris Hall is here, but anyway, I hand over to you for this particular presentation.
Thank you, Harvey. Gavin is actually here to actually take this, and I believe Adele is on the call as well. So as you remember,
the castle, I thought.
Yes. No, yeah. So no, I brought him in. I brought him in from the cold. Yeah. Okay. And so Gavin is here, and I think Chris is here as well. So we're out in force today. So over to Gavin anyway. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Thank you, Chair.
Over to you anyway, Gavin and Singh.
Thanks very much. So this report comes upon the request of members for an update on attendance at primary and secondary, and also to outline the work being done by the council to improve attendance. As we know, improving attendance has been a consistent focus for the council, and I know we're all clear on the links between good attendance and learning progress. We also know the links that are very clearly laid out in the RAS strategy also. If I take you to section 4 of the report, where we are, in section 4, we've included key data for closer viewing. In summary, at the point of lockdown, we'd seen a good increase in secondary attendance when compared to the same period in the previous year. Primary attendance saw a slight reduction based on that same period. The gap between Merthyr schools and the Welsh average has been closing for a number of years, and our rate of improvement in that pre-COVID was the third best in Wales. However, improvement remains and did remain a fluctuating picture, and the profile of improvement doesn't really support a consistent, sustained improvement. So it's a sort of a zigzaggy, slightly upward trend, but what we want to see is a consistent upward trend. In terms of persistent absenteeism, at the point of lockdown, persistent absenteeism was also an improving picture, again closing the gap on the Welsh average. However, figures during and post-lockdown COVID has significantly impacted upon those figures. You can see a breakdown by individual school and some of that summary data in section 4. Where are we now then? Well, attendance during 2021 and into 21-22 has, as we know, been impacted significantly by the ongoing pandemic. 5.2 of the report includes the autumn term comparisons for similar periods last year, and you can see that at secondary the attendance is down a little bit. At primary it's up a little bit. In terms of persistent absenteeism, as I said, there's been an increase in the percentage of absenteeism since the beginning of the pandemic in both primary and secondary. And as a result of this increase, bespoke action plans were prepared for 12 schools in September to support them in that particular area of focus. And I'm pleased to say progress is encouraging. We've seen a reduction in persistent absenteeism. At secondary, we've seen a reduction from 28.11% at the start of the autumn term down to 23.54%. And at primary from 17.17 to 13.41. It is a varied picture. There are some schools that have been able to see that reduction come down significantly. Others not quite as much, but there has been a reduction over the autumn term in all our schools in terms of persistent absenteeism, which is an encouragement. Obviously, there's still work to be done. Sections 5.8 to 11 go through a number of areas of work that have been developed or are in the process of being developed to support our work around improving attendance. And section 6 is specifically about the attendance review, which is a significant piece of work, and I'm just going to take a moment to take you through that because it's something that will be in place for some time, and I'm sure we'll come back to scrutiny for further discussion as it embeds and makes an impact. So the reason for the review was really for a number of things that we saw a mixed economy in place around service provision. We saw that varied spiky picture in place, and it was felt that to bring about a sustained improvement in attendance, we needed to have a good fresh look at it. An independent review was commissioned, and that review was commissioned to look at two specific things. One was around gathering and analysing our own data, our own information, to look at how current resources are utilised across our schools, and the impact of the approaches used. And then secondly, to look for best practice models, both locally and nationally, that have been successful, and look at how they could be applied to our local context. The outcome of the review was that there were 19 recommendations made. Recommendations for the local authority, for schools, and for Central South Consortium. There were key areas, and I'll just run through a couple of them. Improving the use of data within schools and with the local authority. Improved joined up working with other departments. Improved lines of accountability with schools. Developing strategic leadership in schools around attendance. Ensuring that appropriate support and challenges in place from the consortium. As I said, there were a few of the key areas, but there are 19 recommendations in all. An action plan was developed, and I know that that was one of the appendices to the report, and obviously there's far more detail available in that. Really key to the success of the action plan or to the improvement in attendance, should I say, is actually the success of the action plan, and we'll be rolling it out to discussions with the consortium over the next couple of weeks, and I'm meeting with head teachers the week after next as well to start looking at how we can embed it. That's basically a whistle-stop tour of this report. I'm happy to discuss any aspect of it, either of the data or the wider agenda, and so Chair, open to any questions.
Thank you, Gavin, for that. Francis, I notice you got your hand up.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's just a minor point it is, but in point 8.2, it states utilising Welsh Government funding to approve attendance. Where would that funding be put? Would that just be additional FLOs or attendance wellbeing officer, just to boost the number of those to provide more coverage, or is there a pathway or a plan set up for that funding?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The Welsh Government basically, if I give you a tiny bit of background, they basically came to local authorities and said, could you put to use some additional funding? We responded with a plan of what we would like to fund. Welsh Government then let local authorities know of 7 particular areas in which the funding could be used. Some of those crossed over with what we were looking to do anyway, some didn't. So as a sort of a rough picture, the funding that we're looking to use is we're looking to support with the funding as a whole. Our focus is a little bit on year 11 in terms of those that have not been attending, to encourage attendance. Welsh Government have focused this funding on year 11, years 7 to 9, and then a range of general needs, including trauma-informed schools, which we've been hearing about wonderfully this afternoon. So we're looking at key focuses around year 7 to 9, and that will be putting some funding into schools to support the work of the flows. Year 11 will be specifically around encouraging attendance of those year 11s to make the most of the next term and a half. We will be supporting the trauma-informed school agenda, and there's some exciting discussions going on about how we can support other primaries in that, and we'll be able to provide more support, more information on that as time goes on. We're looking to see how we can provide incentives to pupils to get them back into schools, and we're looking at a sort of a fairly traditional media campaign to raise awareness generally around attendance. So they're the plans that we've got. We haven't had them signed off by Welsh Government as yet, and the timescale for spending the budget is basically the end of the financial year. So this is a very quick sort of, I don't know, what is it, 10-week turnaround for the use of this funding, but we are absolutely going to make the most of every penny.
Sorry, Gavin, just a quick little follow-up. You said it's going to be spent by the end of the financial year, and it is yet to be signed off. So is everything in place? We're just waiting for that final tick in the box, are we?
It is, yeah. I mean, it was only the week before last that Welsh Government actually confirmed what the 7 areas were. So we turned around the working out how we could use that funding last week. That's gone back to Welsh Government. They've got it. We're just waiting on. But in terms of some of the actual workings around the spend, we're 100% sure that they're going to agree with what we've said, because it specifically relates to the areas that they've given us. So we're just cracking on anyway. But yeah, it's it's one of those Welsh Government budgets that's come very late in the financial year, which isn't always helpful. But we're very grateful for the funding, and we'll make the best use of it that we possibly can.
Yeah, no problem. That's all my little points I had on that. Thank you very much, Gavin.
Thank you.
Any others? If not, Gavin, can I pose a question to you? In the review that was undertaken by the consultant at page 27, he's asked a very, very important question. Consider how targets are set across all schools to support the improvement of attendance at the local authority level. So he's asking us to look at our school targets. But what is concerning me is he's asking how the targets are set. Right? The reason I ask that question is if you were to go to page 11, where you've inserted the performances in attendance of each and every one of the primary schools, the secondary are overleaf, we won't bother with those. Looking through the list, I can see the school targets are being set at basically 95% or above. Now, 95% is the Welsh Government target that they put out several years ago. Whether it still exists, I don't know, but the important thing is 95% should be basically the going rate then for those schools in Merthyr who are near that sort of figure. But if you look through the school targets, you can see, I can see now in front of me about 5 schools where their performance over 2017-18 and 2018-19 are down in the 93, 93.41, 93.02, 93.85, and so it goes on, 93. And they have set targets that basically have resulted in a few of those schools being set at over 95%. Now, there's heck of a discrepancy between what they're attaining. It's not a one-off. It's coming year after year after year, where they are hitting at 93, but we are setting targets based at 95. Now, that's why I feel the question is in there for us to consider how the targets are set. I don't know how the targets are set. Do you know?
Yeah, they are set. I mean, there's a lot to unpick on what you said, and I'll go into some of it more if that's okay. Yeah, they are worked out by the local authority and provided to schools, and they are based on previous year's data. What I would say on this, and this is what comes out really clearly in the review, is that targets need to be aspirational, but they also need to be realistic. They need to be achievable. Exactly. And if you look at the very top, I think it's the top recommendation, and if it's not the number one recommendations in my head, it's the top recommendation, is that as a local authority and schools, we need to use the data more effectively. We've done some, so for example, you know, how do we shape improvement in attendance? You can set an aspirational target, and you know, like you said, year in, year out, schools can fail to achieve it. You can set an achievable target that schools can just nail, or you can set a target that is aspirational and you know, it's sort of achievable, and that's what we're going for. But how do you set that target? One of the things you can do is you can work out what does at a school level, and we've modeled this across secondary and primary and at an individual school level. You can look at what number of additional sessions per pupil or per year group would need to be attended to see in that year group or in that pupil or in that school attendance rise by 0.1%, 1% or more. What you're then doing is you're basically kind of applying the same approach that would be used in other areas to see attendance improve. You're saying, okay, if we can encourage a particular pupil who's disengaging to be in for one more session over the course of 2 weeks, that will actually impact upon their attendance X amount. So that's realistic. Aspirational is to encourage them and try and get them and put energy into seeing them attend 2 more sessions. Once you expand that across the whole school or the whole year group, and you then expand that across all our primaries, all our secondaries, what you then see is a realistic, sustainable improvement in attendance, because you're at a granular level, you're challenging attendance and you're seeing that work out. So that's kind of the operational element, but strategically then you're seeing the end result of across the board attendance improving. So the fundamental key to seeing that improvement in attendance is how, as a local authority, we set our targets wisely, so that they are aspirational and achievable. How we support and work with schools to see that broken down. What does that mean in reality on the ground? And then together we have that accountability framework, which is also one of the recommendations, to ensure that there are systems and processes in place to flag up where things are falling back a little bit, and drive forward that change. We don't want it to be, and apologies if I'm kind of belaboring this, but what we don't want it, because attendance is crucial to everything, isn't it? What we don't want it to be is that on a half-termly basis, there's data produced that is shared, and then there's nothing, it's just shared. We want to make sure that there's that flow of attendance data, that where there are weaknesses, that strength is applied, where there is good practice in one school or in one cluster, that's shared. Where, you know, we do have some good practice models coming from outside the local authority and similar type authorities that we can bring to bear. So of those many recommendations, you know, there are some that are absolutely fundamental, and data accountability, those kind of things absolutely are. There are others that you know are lower down the pecking order. There are some quick wins and there are some longer term ones. And what I would say is that what we're not doing is we're not taking a quick fire approach to this. We're not trying to say in 2 weeks time we're going to come back and we're going to report improved attendance, or in a term's time we're going to come back and show improved attendance. We hope that there will be those quick wins, but our plan is that what we want to stop is this ziggy-zaggy action where 1 year it's good because there's been a big input in something or other and then it's back down, and the trend is in the right direction largely, and we're catching up with the Welsh average, but we're still, you know, not punching above our weight compared to other local authorities of a similar demographic. So we're trying to embed good sustainable progress in attendance, and that won't come overnight, and certainly with the pandemic the way it is, you know, it's going to be hard work, but the work we're doing around persistent absenteeism already is bearing some fruit, and we'll continue that work. And with this action plan in place, our expectation is that we'll be able to see that progress. And you'll hold me accountable to those words as well, because at some point I'll come back and talk about attendance again, and you know, and we'll have that discussion as well. So I'm more than happy to do that. Does that answer your question, Chair?
Thank you, Gavin. I totally agree with your comments. Thank you. Any other questions? Jeff?
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment, really. Gavin, I appreciate what you're saying, 100%. But you'll know in any change strategy, quick wins are essential. Without quick wins, the strategy never takes off. So I do agree with you 100% that we don't want to see the zigzag go up and down, but by the same token, quick wins are an essential part of your change strategy. Just a comment.
Yeah, take that, Mod.
Thank you. There's someone else with their hand up. There's no name on the screen, so I just
Thomas,
welcome that person.
It's Thomas.
Hi. It's just a comment to this. Attendance in schools was discussed in the last youth cabinet meeting, and it was said that many people were feeling anxious to go to school because they're saying that people and their friends are saying that they've done the lateral flow tests and they are negative when really they haven't done the lateral flow tests.
Yeah, we know there's a whole range of reasons. I mean, I said it in the report that anxiety is one of many reasons why, you know, we've got a problem with attendance that is linked, you know, that aspect is linked very much with COVID. What we need to be careful going forward is that doesn't kind of leach into attendance post, you know, COVID. So what we're trying to see is that attendance improve. But yeah, there are a range of reasons, and I know that it's, you know, it's difficult for pupils and for families at the moment in that area.
Okay, thank you for that, Thomas. Any others? Kath?
Right, thank you. When we talk about attendance, we are dependent on data. How confident are we that the data that is received about attendance is consistent across our schools? Otherwise, the whole idea of attendance becomes somewhat shambolic, to say the least.
Yeah, we it's a good question. We work hard to make sure that the data is accurate. So, for example, where there are missing marks, we have a data feedback loop with education welfare officers and flows, making sure that on a regular basis the data set is accurate. Also, there is sort of check and challenge around how things are coded. And so on. So that is the responsibility of education welfare officers working with flows and so on. So you know, when you think of the number of sessions and the number of pupils and the number of schools, there will occasionally be anomalies, but what we've got is a very, very good team that are checking the data. And then obviously there are, like I said, there are the sort of data checks that go on. So in terms of the ultimate data set, I'm confident that it will be accurate. In terms of when you break that down by things like year group and individual codes, I'm confident that the data that we'll be using will be accurate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kath. Any other questions? No, if not, thank you for that, Gavin.
Thank you, Chair.
Very good report, very good. On to item 5, Estin Self-Evaluation Reporting Framework. Sue?
Thank you, Chair. Anthony's here as well to actually look at this one. This is our normal sort of cycle when we bring in self-evaluation reports to a committee to actually consider. This is we brought local question 2 to the scrutiny a couple of months ago, and this is sort of the leadership and management aspect of it. As you can see from the report, we've made judgments on it. We still say that the overall judgment for this local authority, for this question, will be adequate, because there are strengths that actually outline that there are strengths, but there are still significant areas to actually consider. But there are within that report, because it isn't just an overall leadership and management, it is various aspects. So we say that our use of resources is good, that performance management and how we're actually using the self-evaluation is good. But overall, we are saying that we still say that this aspect is adequate. Anthony, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, so I think you've covered it there, really. As you say, there's good elements within the IA3 with parts of the sub-questions, some good features, but there's a couple of important areas which are adequate and that lead the overall judgment to be adequate, as it was last year, really. Albeit more work has been done and more improvements have been made with regards to embedding priorities into our improvement plans. That's going to take a little bit more time to see the benefit of that, but as you say, it's adequate overall. but good progress from last year, I think, overall as well.
Thank you for that, Anthony. Any questions? Jeff?
Yeah, just a quick one for Sue and Anthony. Thank you, Chair. If a school was given this adequate, and I appreciate you being totally honest about it, but then that's the only way to be. If a school was given this adequate, what would you do as Chief Education Officer to the school to ensure that they made more progress towards their goals? And are you, as an authority, actually undertaking that yourself?
If a school, right, so if a school were to have adequate on this aspect, it would, as you know, as many of you are aware, because many of you are governors, it's that whole gambit of leadership, isn't it? From governance, from governors through to the head teacher, through to the deputy head, through to that senior leadership. It's leadership at all levels. And I think this self-evaluation is the same thing. It's leadership at all levels. So whilst it's within the education department, and I think what we have to consider is that there are 2 new heads of service within the leadership department as well. So there is work that needs to be done to develop the capacity of the team within the learning department. It's also governance as in scrutiny, this sort of committee. It's also governance as in cabinet and as in corporate management team. So I think it's fair to say, and I think Lisa and Harvey would agree, that the local authority is on a journey. It's been on a journey since the Assurance Board came in. And actually that is why we're looking at it. So it is an honest appraisal. Jeff, you were probably old enough to remember when you've been a governor for long enough to remember when there was that sort of category where you could say Eston monitoring, that you weren't really, really good, but you weren't there. And I think that's what we're saying. We're not there, but we know where we need to go to actually do it. And it is looking at governance at all levels, which is why I couldn't, in all honesty, we had long discussions about it. We couldn't say good.
And appreciate that, Chair, and so fully appreciate what you're saying. And it makes logic sense, yeah. But you're on a change route and change strategy. And as I said to Gavin, you need some quick wins under your belt, just to really embed this in the minds of your staff, your senior leaders, everybody within the system. What are you doing to achieve these quick wins, Sue?
Okay, I think one of the things that we're doing is making sure that within all our plans there's a golden thread. So if you actually look at the corporate plan, it has education as a priority. If you look at the RTI plan, it has education as a priority and starts mentioning the RAS. So then you come down to the RAS, and our business improvement plans within the department all show how they link to the commitments of the RAS. If you start looking at school improvement plans, those of you that are currently on governing bodies in schools, and it was interesting that both Alec and David referred to the RAS in their presentations. So you've got that golden link, right, that golden thread right the way through. There's actually talking about that strategy, which has got raising aspirations and raising standards at the heart of it. So there's a quick win, getting people on board to actually start using the language of that strategy in what we do. What we have to start doing now is focusing on the delivery and ensuring that we have some impact on that delivery.
Fine, thank you, Sue. I thought I'd get a fulsome answer, and I did. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? No? If not, we move on to item 6, which is the forward work programme for this year, and it gives members the opportunity of considering whether they would want an additional item or items put into the work programme. I've always said this, and I'll say it again, you haven't got to decide today. You can bring it up at any time with the scrutiny support officer. Item 7, referrals. Saeed?
No referrals to report from me, Harley, no.
No referrals. Thank you. Item 8, reflection and evaluation of the meeting from myself. Well, the 3 reports that we've had today, very, very important. Sue will know that I will always put the attendance part of it as the most important, and I will again this afternoon. A vital piece of information or pieces of information within that report. We just heard Sue commenting on the self-evaluation report, another important report, because that goes to me cap in hand with the attendance. It's the way in which Sue organises herself and members of her department to get to grips with the things that need doing within the department itself. And that includes, obviously, attendance. The 3rd report then, which was the presentation on trauma from the 2 officers. I mean, Ernie summed it up. Excellent report. And I think everybody was captured by the 2 head teachers in what they had to tell us about how we are proceeding with that particular subject, because that has got a knock-on effect, trauma. You all realise this. It's got a knock-on effect on all what Sue is attempting to do as Director of Education. So those are the 3 items. I think it's been an excellent meeting in terms of the knowledge that we have picked up from those 3 items. On to any other business, and Jeff wishes to bring an extra item up regarding one of the schools in his area.
Thank you, Chair. A recent issue has been brought to my attention concerning road safety at a school premises. I can't disclose which school I'm referring to at this point, but due to the nature of the concern, I think it would be prudent for the committee to consider a future report in relation to health and safety arrangements across our schools, including the safety of access provisions to schools. This could be potentially reported at a joint scrutiny committee with neighbourhood services in order for committee members to have a full understanding of the health and safety arrangements across our schools, and also for committee members to provide the necessary challenge and address any issues that may be identified. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions or observations from members? Francis?
Yeah, just about the point about the sort of transport and safety and everything outside the schools as a what kind of turnaround are we looking here? Are we looking, would this go to the schools individually and ask for their feedback initially, and then the transport, the transport scrutiny committee, and obviously they would have to work with highways, etc. So this is a great thing to look forward to and something that needs working on. It's just a case of looking at an initial time scale, because it's quite a broad ranging topic, and to bring questions to the committee such as these, it'd be handy to look at if we had some sort of deadline maybe initially, just so we can start drafting questions or looking at areas we would want to explore on this.
Yeah, I see the point, Chair, absolutely, and I agree. There's some urgency about some of this. If we're talking about road safety, at any particular school across the borough, the last thing we or anybody would want is for a child to be hurt at any of the school locations or anywhere else for that matter, but particularly under our remit of at school education departments. So I think it needs an initial scope to determine what is believed to be safe and what isn't and why it is. And then for perhaps a more in-depth look at this, perhaps Harvey in a future meeting or a future area that we could look at. It's really and truthfully so that we get the chance to have somebody really look deeply at what the problems are or may be, and whether the report that I have is actually standing up to scrutiny. The report I have, obviously, I can't go into at the moment, as I said, but once we've got more borough-wide information, then we'll be able to really go to town on it and determine. It's just literally the case of we need action to happen, and we need the borough to look at it. And as soon as they look at it and determine there is an issue, I'm sure they will do something about it pretty quick.
I think Francis have hit the nail on the head when he basically asked the question, are we talking about one or are we talking about every school, and how long is it going to take, what the turnover would be? My suggestion on this, and I've already mentioned it to Jeff, because he's raised the issue of a specific school, that we look at that school, at the problems, it'll have to be our highway people, no doubt about it. Sue can't get too involved in determining whether something's safe or not safe. It's the highway people who would have to take this on board. They will come back to us with what they consider to be wrong and how much that is going to cost for us to put right. And I think it's when we've got that information with us, we can make a decision whether we go ahead or not then with the specific school, but at the same time, as we are considering what is wrong, with the problems within this particular school, whether those problems exist in other schools throughout the county borough. But we won't know that until the highway people, who are, after all, the professional officers on this, when we get the report, then will be the time to act. And that's what I would put to committee this afternoon in order for us to make progress on the issue that Jeff brought to us regarding one school.
Yeah, and you'll have to forgive me, Harvey, because I'm not au fait with the full processes that the scrutiny take. But this one particular school already has had the departments concerned look at things, yeah, and then put a monetary factor into the calculation. Monetary factor and safety should not go hand in glove. That's all I say. I don't want to put it on the record or anything, Harvey. I just want purely and simply for this scrutiny committee, as it's part of education and health and safety of our children going or coming from school, yeah, to be able to look at that and to recommend to council that which needs to happen, and it's not a monetary concern. I'm not talking millions of pounds, of course not, but I am talking money. I don't know what terms of money I'm talking about. I haven't got a clue, but I do want children safe at this particular school.
If we are talking about speed, and the reason you were brought this up, Jeff, is because in one particular school, you have identified a problem. You admitted that, you've taken it through the community council. They said They said they haven't got the resources to do it, the money, etc., etc. What I'm looking for is the quickest way of getting to grips with the problem that you have highlighted. That is by taking that school, giving it to a specialist officer in highways for him to look at it, come back to scrutiny, whether it's this committee or the relevant committee that deals with highways, or a combination of both, right? And we look at that, because as a result of that, we can get that job done for you then. If we got to go and get officers to go around 28 schools in Merthyr, plus the pupil referral unit, plus Greenfield, we're talking about 30. Well, I can see them coming back here in September, October of next year, and we haven't done anything. If someone was to be injured in the school that you were talking about now, we'd never forgive
ourselves. Understanding that we needed to put it borough-wide to bring it before this committee. Maybe my understanding was wrong. So it is specifically, it is specific. Hello, anybody hear me?
Yes, go on.
Sorry,
so what does the committee feel? You know, I've got open mind. I just put forward a suggestion to move the thing forward as quickly as possible. In case it is what Jeff is saying, an accident.
Sorry, if I could come into this, Harvey, I think
I have said now it's entirely up to the committee.
Yeah, if obviously I leave it open to the committee, but if I could just come in quickly at this point, Harvey, obviously we can't mention the school in question that Jeff is referring to here, but I think it is something to pick up offline, perhaps in a closed off meeting, and something we can discuss for future considerations. I know that the issue is ongoing, and highways are aware of the issue, so they are aware of it. They're looking into it. And I know obviously that I've had discussions with yourself and Jeff offline about it as well. But I think perhaps, you know, in terms of actually discussing it, we can go in a little bit more depth. And, you know, if we take this offline, so I'm happy to meet, you know, separately, even if it's just, you know, for 15, 20 minutes offline, just to decide the next course of action. But that's my thoughts on it.
So what's your wish? Francis?
Yes, Chair. I was just looking, you know, if I was just assuming that, you know, if one school is having this issue, there may be more in the area, and it was just a case if we could come back with a list of schools we've had issue, you know, the issues have been raised by a certain point, so we can maybe see if this is, like you said, a borough-wide issue or a single issue that can be resolved at a more local level. I mean, you know, like you said, this is a borough-wide scrutiny committee, and obviously, while it is part of our remit, you know, with the education side of it, if it is a large, this may be the tip of, you know, the tip of the wedge about some sort of safety issues across maybe more, you know, a selection of schools. And it's just a case of, if we give ourselves as a committee a date of, let's go and find out and speak to the parents, the children, the staff at the schools before a certain date, then we can bring it all back and say, well, actually, we've had X amount of reports of safety issues. We can look at this at a bigger scale then.
So if I was to ask you then, Francis, what are you suggesting as the way forward?
Well, again, if we say maybe by the next scrutiny committee, which is the start of March, if that's not too long a timetable, just to see if members of this scrutiny committee can inquire about any road safety issues at schools within the wards or the borough-wide. I know for a fact, while not Merthyr and myself, well, my sister has been working with a safer school scheme down in Lantwick Major, where they're looking to, where the school is in a dead-end street, they're looking to enforce traffic restrictions at the sort of start and end of the school day to allow the children to walk safely down the street without vehicles in the street for that sort of 45 minutes before and after, while they've got to come to some sort of arrangement with the residents of the street. You know, that's moved quite forward, well forward, and they're looking to have that implemented with the bollards and the restrictions ready for the start of the next school year. So, you know, there are options there. It's just a case of we need to know the scale of the problem to see if it's, you know, if the single school streets for this one individual school may be the best route, or if it's something we need to look to enforce maybe on a wider scale. So if we give ourselves, you know, get any sort of concerns we have and any reports we have in by the ready to be put together for the next scrutiny committee, maybe it's something we can look forward into taking, advancing on to, well, get something in place over the summer, maybe ready for the start of the next school year, if that's not too long a timetable.
Right, okay. Have we got a seconder for that now? Someone to support, Francis? Ernie, right?
Yeah, I'm okay, Harvey.
Right. Any other suggestions? No? Right. All in favour of the suggestion has been put forward by Francis and backed up by Ernie? Are we all in favour there? Nobody against then, let's put it that way. Right, okay. So Saeed, we'll take notice of what has been suggested there now, and we can start the ball rolling on that. Okay?
No problem. Happy to have that discussion with you offline, Harvey. No problem.
Yeah, well, I think if we're talking about it offline now, well, it all depends how long it's going to take. Because some of the members, one have already gone, others may want to go now as soon as this meeting finishes. So I don't think now there are any other issues. So, okay, we can call this meeting to halt now. And then Saeed, where do we go from here now regarding this offline meeting?
I will contact you offline. It doesn't have to be this afternoon. I'll contact at some point tomorrow if you wish, Harvey, and I can give you more specific details about the issue that Jeff is referring to. Obviously, I can't disclose them